I believe there are 10 aspects of leadership that each one of us should be mindful of. The first and foremost idea, lead with purpose and not position. Meaning that the very idea of leadership should be purpose driven. You need to be conscious of the fact that what is the larger purpose behind your work, your contribution, your impact within the organization. Many a time, leadership lessons do not recognize that. Most of leadership has unfortunately focused on power, the power structures and the hierarchies of power that enable us to do things. While power is important, and not to underestimate the importance and ability of power and the exercise of power to do things, I think it's important even before you go into power, you first need to recognize the purpose behind leadership. And if you have to sort of go beyond the structures of power that defines leadership, where you have different hierarchical orders, you have different people with different designations who wield and exercise power, you need to first recognize that leadership is about purpose and not power. The second thing I want to quickly tell you is that, lot of companies, corporations have great vision. And most of the time, vision determines your ability to do what you set out to do. Vision without execution is actually almost a disappointment, because you may have a great vision, but you need to put in the resources, the consciousness, the commitment and dedication to be able to execute it. And execution is the most critical element when it comes to fulfilling the vision. And here, leadership has to play a very big role. For example, many companies, corporations, organizations are sort of established through the vision of great leaders. But then that vision, for it to get translated into actual realities, or to be able to implement the vision or to execute the vision, you need people who are prepared to take responsibility. And that's why I want to go back to the first point I made, which is that leadership is about defining the purpose and not position, but it is also about ensuring that vision is executed and power is exercised with responsibility. And so leadership is about recognizing that the vision that you want to have is executed with responsibility. So that's a second major lesson in leadership. Now, the third lesson in leadership that I want to emphasize is that courage and resilience in the face of uncertainty. Now, this aspect of facing uncertainty with courage is not just only about the big existential challenge that you face. It may also be smaller challenges that all of you face on a day-to-day basis. For it to have that impact, you need to be conscious about that point which I mentioned earlier, which is responsibility. So in many ways, the 10 challenges or the 10 aspects of leadership that I am going to outline for you are all related to each other. I began with purpose and not position. Then we talked about vision and execution. And the third is about courage with conviction in the face of uncertainty. So the fourth aspect of leadership is about empathy. Many people end up thinking that empathy is about having a soft approach to leadership. No, it's not. It's actually coming from the show of strength. In fact, you can be empathetic only when you are strong about your own thought process, your own ideas, your own perspectives. So empathy is not about being weak and being emotional. Empathy is about demonstrating the fact that you are committed to certain values that are going to build that organization, and everybody is connected to those values. And that is the fourth aspect of leadership that I just wanted to articulate. Sooner than later, organizations and individuals who have compromised on integrity end up suffering. And so integrity ought to become a part of the organizational culture. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because many a time in the kind of jobs that we all do, in the kind of roles and responsibilities that we undertake, we are confronted with unique challenges. And the challenges will always come up with certain shortcuts that might seem to be effective, can provide an immediate solution, but ultimately these shortcuts will have an adverse impact on the organizational culture, let alone undermining the institutional integrity of the organization, but more importantly, the individual concerned. The worst that can happen to an organization is that you lose credibility. Credibility of an organization, it builds its brand value. Many people who work in the sort of branding, field, they take enormous effort to promote different brands, engage in advertising, engage in promoting that brand. But the most important part of any brand, corporate or institutional, is the institutional integrity that comes with credibility. The sixth point about leadership is that it's a temptation for all of us who are leaders that we should resist. Build teams and not followers. One of the things that we see a lot in India, both in organizations and in companies and corporations, business enterprises, is that people don't challenge leaders. People don't speak up to leaders. People don't, let's say, engage with leaders about their thought process, because leaders have historically preferred to have followers and not teams. So this is something that you want to build. So as a leadership principle, it's easy to say what I just said, which is leaders ought to be able to empower teams and not followers. But in practical terms, you need to create an ecosystem. You need to create an environment where people are able to freely express their thoughts, ideas, and perspectives, and not to be feared by any form of reprisal or sanction to the leaders. Teams are not made by leaders. Teams are not made by followers. Teams are made by people who have been able to invest in the collective vision and are able to trust the team so that they can together achieve the results and the intended outcomes. There is always a risk of the fact that a leader, if he or she is not confident to be able to accept the criticism, take responsibility about failures, and are prepared to engage with the team, you simply will not be able to create a culture of people disagreeing and even respectfully disagreeing with you. The seventh aspect of leadership is about recognizing the new challenges that we are facing in every industry, every organization, and every company in India or around the world. The thematic focus of that is about adapt to the new changes or become irrelevant. Adapting to change is one of the most important qualities of great leaders. Today, we are at the cusp of changes that are impacting the world of artificial intelligence, robotics, and machine learning. Adaptability is a central framework for building resilience. New changes, sometimes changes may come on account of technology, sometimes it may come on account of policy and regulation, sometimes it might come on account of competition, sometimes it may come on account of big crises. The eighth aspect of leadership is about communication, and communication with clarity and conviction. Nobody is infallible. We are all fallible, meaning we are all prone to making mistakes. To err is human. So because of the fact that you are a leader who exercises power, that does not mean that you can assume that you will always be right. Have humility to recognize that there may be other ways to do things. And that's why communication with clarity and conviction will help you to create and empower others who can also share their views and perspectives. This communication is so central to good leadership, because without communicating your views and perspectives, people will not be in a position to take informed choices. Much worse, people will not be able to share their valuable views and perspectives, which I believe will be so critical for you to take the right decision. Because ultimately, whether you are the topmost leader or a high-level leader or a middle-level leader or somebody who's below but yet a leader, all leaders are hoping that their decisions are right. But how do you reduce the risk of failure? You reduce the risk of failure by creating an enabling environment where as many views and perspectives are freely shared, options are evaluated, and ultimately decisions are taken. This process is so central and so critical, especially when you are working with uncertainties. The ninth is something I briefly touched on, which is resilience. There are so many setbacks that a company, a corporation, a business enterprise end up facing. Resilience is not a sort of a single act of bravery. It is not a single act of leadership. It is not a single act of transformation. It is not a single act of bravery. It is not a single act of courage or conviction. Resilience is about building an internal strength and culture of overcoming adversity. The 10th and the last aspect of leadership is that something that you're all contributing to, which is about legacy. This legacy, the heart of this legacy is what? The heart of this legacy is about leaving the world a better place than what it was when you came in. So the idea of intergenerational equity, where I ought to leave the world a better place than the time I came in. So let's say we come into the world, we spend say 60, 75, 100 years or whatever, but then when we leave the world, we need to leave the world a better place. You simply cannot achieve the 2047 Viksit Bharat vision unless and until companies and corporations are able to go beyond the typical and limited approach towards profit making, not recognizing impact on the lives of people. Leadership is about personal values. Leadership is about character. Leadership is about recognizing value in each person. Leadership is about respect. Leadership is about integrity. Leadership is about honesty. Leadership is about rectitude. Leadership is about giving and not just getting. Leadership is about asking the question, what can I do, as opposed to what can I get? Leadership is about serving as example. Leadership is about empowering. Leadership is about giving away power so that others are able to exercise it with integrity. Leadership is about giving credit and appreciation to the other and not taking all the credit to yourself. Leadership is about strength and not weakness. Leadership is about transformation.